Rudy Maxa. Now we're live. Hi, Rudy Maxa here. It is Thursday, October 28th, 2021. If you were watching this or starting to watch this later on YouTube or on Facebook, just keep in mind we're talking October 28th of 2021. Travel is picking up a bit around the world. In about 10 days, Europeans are allowed to come, who have been vaccinated, allowed to come to the United States. And countries that have been locked tighter than a drum, like Thailand, are allegedly opening November 1st, which is just around the corner. So that's the state we're in now. And I want to talk purely about travel today with a man who knows a lot about travel. My guest is John Golicz. He and his son and his company run next year they're running 9 travel and adventure shows. Now, these are weekend shows held in major cities in the United States. And they feature booths and entertainment from countries, cruise lines, resorts, destinations, you name it, anything having to do with travel. There are people selling luggage there. There are people selling travel insurance, just about anything to do with travel. My partner Tommy and I are there with a booth for Maxa Travel, our sort of small upscale European travel company. And I have been speaking at these travel and adventure shows for longer than I can remember. And John and his wife. John, welcome to the show. Nice to have you here.
Hey, Rudy, how are you?
Nice to see you. I was just did you hear what I started to give your bio here? Did you hear that?
I did hear that. Thank you. Good.
So I was just bragging on your shows. Not only are there hundreds of booths from various folks who want to invite you to their whatever ship, destination, airline. He has John and his son put together a wide range of speakers. This year included the writer Paul Theroux, Andrew McCarthy, the actor and the writer. I call her America's travel sweetheart, Samantha Brown, who has a popular travel show now on public television. Who else? We got, I know we're forgetting a couple more. Who wrote 1,000 Things to Do Before You Die? Patricia
Schultz, Pauline Fromer.
Fromer.
Josh Gates, of course, was at San Francisco this past weekend.
Josh Gates, John's last travel adventure show in San Jose / San Francisco ended last weekend. I was there, and Josh Gates came, and I don't know Josh Gates well. I've had him on my radio show a couple of times. We've talked, but I could not believe he drew the biggest crowd of anyone. I mean, even more than Peter Greenberg.
Rock star right now.
And he was a rock star. He had a 90-minute line of people waiting to sign autograph photos and books and so on. I handed it to Josh Gates. But anyway, it has been obviously an unusual time for John in his business, as it has been for anybody in the travel business. I think you had 2 or 3 travel shows at the beginning of 2020. Yeah, John?
Yeah, we did. 2020, we got through, most of the season. We got through 7 out of 10 shows back then.
Oh, you did?
Right. We had our launch of Atlanta at the beginning of the month, and it went great. We started hearing about COVID a little more there. So I remember running out to the Target locally to get some hand sanitizer and gloves, but they were sold out. And then we went to DC. That was our last live show we ran pre-pandemic. And that was affected on attendance, as we can all remember, but it was still a strong show. Mm-hmm. And then 1, 2, 3, we went from Dallas, Philadelphia, Dallas, San Francisco, all canceled, and all the world shut down in a matter of weeks, right? So it was a long, dry 18 months of people just trying to keep their travel dreams alive. We went virtual for a lot of the series, and that went very well. But it was time to go back. And as you said, we just did 3 shows, Dallas, Atlanta, and the San Francisco Bay Area, and each one got better as we went. And we were happy to do it.
I should point out that John has been in this business about 25 years. He's putting these shows on. In fact, he has just taken over what used to be called the New York Times Travel Show Forever in New York, and that's going to be in New York at the end of January. And it's going to be the first time his firm will be in charge. So as I say, these travel shows feature booths from all kinds of travel folks, and there are many discounts that we give very large discounts on our European vacations at these shows, and I know others do as well. Great speakers, often 2 or 3 at once, sometimes stepping on each other's foot. John's working on that. But it's just a great way to go on a Saturday or Sunday. I'll list all the cities at some point during our talk about what's coming up in 2022. First one being the New York show at the end of January. But the reason I asked John on is because he is unique in having his finger on the pulse of the travel industry, because he deals with all these he and his company deal with all these entities who like to have booths. And I'm not telling any trade secrets. The last 3 shows in the last couple of months have been maybe 1/3 to 1/2 the size of your normal shows. So he knows who's interested in coming to shows and putting on booths. That's telling him very dramatically the strength of the travel business. So let me start with my first question for you, John, with overall for 2022, how do you feel the travel industry is going to be? What are your sales of booths and talking to your folks in the industry telling you?
So, we'll start with 21. How's that? And in 21, we saw Americans starting to leave their shell and travel, albeit closer to home, right? So most people started by going on a weekend trip, drive trip, or something like that. Then we saw air traffic pick up domestically, and the domestic, what we call DMOs or tourism boards in the States, especially the southern states, warm states, have done very well during 2021. Some of them had Florida, record year, right? Texas did well. So we have a lot of these areas that have sort of opened up, done well, accepted visitors. And I don't know if you've been to Florida lately, Rudy, but I remember going to Florida back months ago. It was like you're in a different country. Everyone's walking around, smiling, feeling good, no masks, restaurants open, right? And slowly the rest of the country is kind of getting there. I know in Connecticut, we've gone maskless for quite some time. Everything's open, and it's our governor's done a nice job with it. California is still a little bit in the throes of unlocking, if you will. But we've seen domestic travel really take off. When you relate it to the shows, of course, you're right. Our shows have been smaller for numerous reasons, right? Some people just have travel bans, right? Some of these state entities can't send people. We couldn't get Europe to come here because we're not allowing it to.
They couldn't come here.
It's closed, right? So someone came up and said, hey, where's all the Europe guys? I go, in Europe, they can't come here. They go, oh, that makes sense. But we're seeing it, in a couple of weeks, that's opened up for vaccinated European travelers, and pretty much worldwide travelers, if you're vaccinated, can start coming to the U.S. We, as a consumer, are starting to go overseas more, and we've seen those bookings starting to increase. So if you've been to an airport multiple times like us, you see they're getting quite busy again, right? Sadly, we see all the amateurs coming back into the planes, and we need to calm that whole mess down, right? But overall, the airlines are catching up and trying to do a better job, and we're starting to move around again. We see with our exhibitors, European and international bookings are really taking off for 22 and 23.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I know in San Diego / San Francisco, which was actually held in Santa Clara, but anyway, the Northern California show, there were some significant booths from Taiwan and China, some of the Asian countries that were missing, that were not there in Atlanta and in Dallas. I know, of course, the West Coast is more Pacific oriented than most of the United States. So it makes sense, but I was glad to see them, and I gather because many of them can't travel either now quite yet to the United States, but I gather they were based in the U.S. They have significant tourism bureaus in California. But so you are saying that you're talking to possible, what are we called? Not displayers.
People who sell travel, tour operators, and
you're finding residents in Europe and maybe even in Asia, people saying, yeah, we'll be there in 2022.
Right, in 2022 and on, right? So here's what's happening right now. If you're going through an organized travel mechanism, cruise, tour, package provider, or something like that, a lot of people are working off what we call credits, right? People who canceled their trips during the pandemic and are trying to reschedule.
Right.
90% of the people that I talk to who are in this business said most of their customers left their money with them and kept rescheduling. Right. Now, we had that with our exhibitors. Many of them, the canceled shows, stayed with us. We want to get those people taken care of just from a financial standpoint off our books and closed out and move on, right? So do these tour operators. The problem you have as a consumer is a lot of those travelers, and I'm talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions, have booked up 2022 peak dates already. Right? So a user traveler coming in new, I want to travel 2022, you're going to be late to find a lot of places in those kind of organizations because they're working off all those credits. That said, with everyone having a lot of 2022 plans already, we're starting to look at bigger trips being booked for 2023. So we're the perfect example. We have a family trip, multi-generation trip every year, 14 of us, ages 12 to 85. And we've been going every year for 10 years, either on a major cruise, we rent villas in Tuscany. 2 years ago, we rented a villa in Amalfi Coast, right? No,
Nice.
overlooking the water.
Sure.
Can't wait to go. Canceled last year, right? We rebooked it for this June, fingers crossed, right? But that's our big trip, right? Now, my wife and I go on other trips, and our people do too, but that's the big group trip. What are we booking right now? We just booked a big South Africa 2-week safari, Cape Town kind of package for 2023. So what we're seeing in the industry is a lot of people, especially the bigger trips, are being booked 22, 23 already. And then you're filling in. If you're an active traveler like we attract to the shows, you don't take one trip a year. You may take a big one. Maybe you take another small cruise. You probably do some weekend getaways, maybe another week somewhere, sun and sand, whatever it might be. People are filling in those places now. So we're excited that people are coming out and starting to book. But
So
as a consumer, you got to get moving.
So well, first of all, that's a wide range. Your family trips. I didn't think you were 82 quite yet, John. That's amazing.
I look young.
So what you're saying is there is room for the individual traveler. I mean,
absolutely.
It's not like anybody's saying, "Oh, don't go to Paris in 2022 because everything's full." You're talking about these organized tour groups that had bookings in 2020 and 2021 and have shifted them into 2022.
And even some really desirable cruises, right? Pretty booked up. So you have to know what you're looking for there. If you're looking for the mass ship, 4 days in the Caribbean, plenty of availability. You might not get the week you want. If you're looking for a Mediterranean high-end ship, nice cruise, a lot of those good cabins and good itineraries are booked up. So you have to start getting smart and work with a travel agent right now on booking your travel.
How are you seeing cruise line? If you had to estimate, and maybe you don't feel qualified to do this, I certainly don't, but would you think 50% of cruise ships are back in the water moving around now? Or?
They are starting to move more and more. I don't think it's 50% yet. Europe is more advanced than us. I know river cruises are really rocking right now and moving people around. The cruise lines are, they had a lot of false starts, but they figured it out. They've had a lot of cruises now. And yes, that are full. They're very safe. You're getting on there, you're vaccinated, you're getting tested once a day and so forth. Do they see people in cases of COVID? Of course, right? When you have 1,000, 2,000 people count, someone may have or might get it, but they're tested and isolated and dealt with, right? So we're not seeing any spreader events with cruises. It's actually very safe now. They've done a great job on the cruise lines. They're moving. And I'll tell you how I judge it, Rudy, right? We've been calling cruise lines for a year and couldn't get anyone to answer the phone. Furloughs, shutdowns, all this, right?
Really?
Now the cruise lines are calling us saying, hey, we got to start marketing because we're sailing. We're going to start filling up the ships in the future, and our brand needs some recognition again. So we'd like to see that activity.
Well, that's good for everybody in the travel business. What about the hotel segment, or maybe resort might be a better word since you don't do a lot of urban hotels, but.
I had 2 boys, as you know, get married in September. My oldest got married and just came back from Tahiti, 2 weeks, 3 different islands. He booked that, I would say, in July, August timeframe. It was actually tough to get the dates he wanted. We found a package that had it. My youngest got married 2 weeks later, and to a teacher, so she has to work with the school calendar. Once they want to take their honeymoon the first week of January, right after Christmas. It has been miserable trying to find a resort package for them. They want to go all inclusive because they're younger and don't have tons of extra money. That's helping, of course. But to try to find, even with our contacts, to find that week was hard. We did find one with Elite Island Resorts in Antigua, which is a nice overwater, nice place. But it took some doing. So, it's the good spots are busy. And what's happening is Americans are starting to get more confident of living with COVID as it goes from pandemic to endemic. And they're starting to say, yes, I've been around, I've traveled, I've been in some hotels, I feel pretty safe now. I'm going to start traveling. And the other thing reporting to us, the trend is the trips are more expensive, more intensive, and bigger. So you've been holding on for these past 18 months, you're letting loose in a big way.
All right, we covered cruise lines and hotels. Airlines, I mean, I sympathize with the airlines because normally their pricing patterns are all done by a computer that knows when most of us want to travel and when most of us don't,
right.
And on any particular flight, when it usually fills up or what percentage fills up and what fare they can get away with. Now their computers don't know what to do because computers haven't encountered COVID before. And I mean, I remember a few weeks ago, you could fly nonstop on Delta, American, and JetBlue I don't think United, nonstop from JFK to LAX, Los Angeles, nonstop round trip each way for like $59, which is more than the cab from Midtown Manhattan to JFK. Right. But the problem, and you know this, even though neither of us are airline analysts, that the profit for airlines is in who's paid for seats in the front of the cabin in business first class. And because business travel hasn't recovered to a great extent yet, I think coach fares are creeping upwards. What kind of, I know you often have airlines at your shows.
Sure.
Have you heard anything from them about whether they might be coming back, whether they're feeling good?
Well, there's a difference between domestic and international airlines, right? So the domestic guys are all flying. So the big issue was we went from, 30% of air demand to about 85% of air demand in a matter of months. Mm-hmm. So you're right. A few months ago, there was no capacity. You could fly for almost nothing. Right. It very quickly changed. It's more expensive to fly now. There's more fees, right? Mm-hmm. There's less. Every flight I've taken lately has been full. I don't know about you.
Yeah,
yes. I know, Rudy. We're not always sitting in the back, and we look around, and the front's pretty full too. It is mostly leisure travelers, but businesses are starting to travel again. But we're seeing that the problem is it depends on the airline. Delta's done a really good job of staffing to the recovery rate of the pandemic. Airlines like American and Southwest, you've been seeing in the news, have had a horrible time because they haven't quite matched that. And they tried to go back real fast. The demand is there, but they didn't have their systems in place, and it's all kind of gotten botched up. That's being worked through, so you have to excuse it. It's sort of like hotels. You go to a hotel now, don't be surprised if your room's not cleaned. You have to ask for it now. There's just not enough labor in the hotel pools right now to really give you all. The restaurant may or may not be open, right? So you're still paying the same rate, and you're getting a little less right now. But that's the price we pay to start traveling again as a community. And it's coming, right? Slowly and surely, as we see more and more people planning in advance, we're starting to see that come. I know the typical summer season is pushed into the fall a little bit, so there's more volume than it used to be in the fall. People are getting out, and I think that's the key thing. We noticed at the shows when consumers would come into travelers would come in to see us at the shows. I never really get stopped by an attendee, right? The exhibitors would talk to me, the press, and our speakers like you, Rudy, would come over and chat and say thanks. But usually attendee buys a ticket, come in, they walk around the show 4 or 5 hours, find their trip, and leave. And we're not that important to them, right? But they're pulling me aside these last 3 shows, saying, "Hey, first, thanks for doing it," right? And that was important. They said, we needed this. We wanted to travel. We weren't sure how or if or when. But after talking and seeing all these exhibitors and seeing your speakers and so forth, we feel like you gave us permission to go ahead and travel. And that's kind of what the shows are doing like. So there's a lot of hesitancy still. And we're seeing that the more information we can get to the traveler, I think the better educated they are and the more likely they are to go. And that's our role as a trade show organizer, is to do that. Put the travelers together with the travel providers and let them talk, right? We don't sell anything other than that experience. And that's why the shows have been so successful, because they know they're coming to get real information.
Let me reintroduce our guest if you've just joined us. John Golicz, along with his son, Jonathan Golicz, and their associates have for decades put on travel and adventure shows open to the public. These are publicly, few bucks to get in, free tickets abound at times, and they're mainly in major American cities. Should we list? My list is across the table. You want to list 2022 for me?
Sure. We're starting New York, and then in February we're Chicago, DC, and Boston. In March we're in Los Angeles. In April, we're in Dallas, Atlanta, and Denver. And we end up again in San Francisco Bay Area in May. So we've got a pretty full schedule.
And if any of that speaks to you, just go to travelshows.com and you can see
travelshows.com, and there's a show near you somewhere.
But as I said, John, and I was introducing you, and I got off on a tangent. My guest John has been working for about 25 years putting on these shows. He's just taken over what used to be called the New York Times Show, which will be a New York travel and adventure show. All of the Golicz shows are called travel and adventure shows. They are open to the public. They are generally they're always on Saturdays and Sundays, and they feature not just folks bidding for your business, but there to help you plan trips, right, and hoping that you will choose them, but also a nice raft of speakers, some of whom you probably know, ranging from, I gave the speakers before.
Yeah, I think it's important, Rudy. We have,
Andrew McCarthy.
Right. We have the headliners, as we call them, like yourself,
right?
The well-known people like Rudy and all what we call our celebrity travel speakers. And there's not a lot of celebrity travel people. So we have most of them. Rick Steves will come to some of these shows and so forth.
Yeah.
And they're in our main travel theater, which is really about inspiration, right? You're giving tips, but you're really inspiring people through what you've done to get out there, travel a little differently. I don't think I've heard one of our major speakers say, this is all about using points and getting away cheaper. It's more about, look, just here's how you can have a better experience when you travel, right? Take our advice, and that kind of thing. Then we have another stage called the Savvy Travel Theater, playing off of your past life, and if you will, and it talks about tips and techniques and how to travel better, faster, safer, how to use points, how to find cheaper airlines, how do you pack properly? I mean, I know a lot of people have a problem packing light, and a lot of people are packing organized, right? But if you really want to move around, that's a skill you need to learn, right? How to use technology and apps, right? We'll talk about a session with Patricia Schultz on river cruising, just not a particular brand, just what are the major rivers in the world that river cruising take place on, and what can you expect, right? And then we have a destination theater, which is all that half-hour workshops from our tourism board partners. We'll talk about, Alaska will come up and talk about, here's what you do in Alaska besides cruising. And you'll learn when to go, what to see, and so forth. Or maybe Taiwan will get up there and say, you want to come to Taiwan, here's the experience, here's the money, here's the language, here's what you expect, right? Where are night markets, all that kind of stuff. And then we have a fourth stage, which has been in the past a song and dance global beat stage. This year, we're going to be mixing that with a special interest stage to talk about things like LGBTQ travel. We might talk about religious travel, for example, for those who want to do pilgrimages and go see the Holy Land and so forth. So we're going to specialize that. It doesn't get shooting other things. So the point is you come up with a lot of travel information to help you become a better traveler. And as you know, because you've been preaching this for longer than I've been doing shows, I think, if we can help people become better travelers, they'll travel more and have a more rewarding experience, right? Nothing's worse to me than seeing someone go to Rome and pick out the big Marriott, not the old Italian hotel that's been converted to Marriott, but a modern day brick and glass Marriott, and really don't believe it, right? What you want to do is you want to be able to travel that area and learn more about the culture and the heritage and meet people, and that's what we aim to do.
Well, as I did say in my speech in San Jose last weekend, I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, the beaches in Thailand are now clean. I mean, These are places. I mean, Thailand's been overrun with tourists, and it's had its doors slammed tighter than a jailhouse cell for about 18 months. And and in popular southern island beaches, the beaches are clearer. Venice has finally outlawed the gigantic cruise ships from going down the Grand Canal.
Right.
Towns like Dubrovnik and Barcelona are trying to think about how to. I mean, I love cruising, but cruise ships can be a problem if you've got 3 cruise ships with 3,000 people unloading all at once. First of all, cruise ships, from my understanding, are cruising with fewer people to sort of space the people out right now. They're not cramming they're not filling every berth. And these destinations have sort of rejuvenated. It's sort of leaving a field that's fallow alone, and you come back and, well, there's things growing here. So it's a good time to travel.
It is. And what we hear is, the Europeans in particular are welcoming people, but all the world right now. If you're an American and you're traveling, they're welcoming you with open arms. I mean, the travel industry has been decimated, right? It was the single largest employer in the world, single biggest GDP provider, and it probably contracted by 60 to 70%. Millions of people lost their jobs. The local economies depending on tourism were decimated, and it's trying to claw its way back now. What does it need? It needs people coming in, traveling, using their services, and spending money in those communities, right? That's what we do as travelers.
Right.
And I think the unintended consequence of all this, as you see the over-touristed places that we all know, you mentioned quite a few of them, but Barcelona is a great example, right? I mean, you could barely move around in Barcelona pre-pandemic. Now it's wide open. Now, will that return to a over-touristed area? I'm not sure it will. I think a lot of people are going to look at traveling to different places now than what they used to in the past to avoid the possibility of being too crowded, at least in the short term. And in so doing, you're going to find secondary, tertiary cities that are marvelous that most people don't visit. So I think every traveler right now should look at this as an opportunity to say, I'm going to go back to Italy, but I don't want to go where I used to go. I want to find new gems. Maybe I want to go to the west coast of Italy I haven't done before, right? And start learning more about those countries from a different angle. And I think hopefully as the sales channels for these travel agents and these destinations start getting rebuilt, that's the trend we'll see, that there's not over tourism, but rather widespread, nice level of tourism.
I think you're absolutely right. I was in Dubrovnik a few months ago and there were no cruise ships and I couldn't believe it. I mean, it
Yeah,
was so nice because it can be shoulder to shoulder there during the day when cruise ships unload. They generally go home in the evening, so you have more. That's the night. That's when to see Dubrovnik if there are a lot of cruise ships there. But they too are trying to figure out how to, instead of having 3 cruise ships a day, maybe 2. Um, what about
well, right now they'd be happy to get two, so it's okay.
that's true. Airlines, foreign airlines, they do show often at your
Right.
shows. Are you getting positive vibes from them for 2020?
Yeah, we're just starting to see people. Turkish Airlines have been a bunch of our shows in a bigger way than they normally have because they're trying to get their, routes back up and going. We just saw South African Airlines is starting to fly again within Africa and some other cities within Europe, and they're starting to talk about opening up in the U.S. again. So a lot of these airlines, international ones, I think we saw Lufthansa and some of these others starting to move now, are starting to come online. Now, that's being driven also by the flip side, not us going out, but by Europeans coming in, right?
Right.
As we opened up, we just announced, I think November 8th, everything starts to open for vaccinated travelers, then they have to get here somehow. And that creates demand for the internationally flagged airlines to come in here, right? So we sometimes confuse that, saying, oh, I'd love to go on Lufthansa. Well, they're not coming here to take us there. They're coming here to take them here and back, right? So we just get the benefit of that. We tend to fly the domestic airlines all over the place. So things are moving.
Right. And even among domestic airlines that were still flying to Europe, it wasn't because they were full, because I flew several flights to Europe over the last 18 months and there was a lot of room. It was some of those airlines, they have to use their slots in these major airports like Heathrow and Charles de Gaulle, or they lose them.
Exactly,
and
right.
Those slots cost a whole lot of money and are very hard to get in places, particularly Heathrow. So they were still flying over London, even though going to England was a huge, you had to throw yourself over a whole lot of hurdles to get into England for a while. But that, by the way, England, is much easier to go to now. You can go to the UK. You don't have to have a test before you go. You have a test 2 days after you're there, and that's it. Keeping in mind, I always have to say this, as an American, if you're going out of the country anywhere, at least right now, you have to have a PCR or a rapid antigen test within 72 hours of your departure from that country to get back in the United States. That's a U.S. rule, not the country you're in rule. So I always want to throw that in because people say, you didn't say I didn't have to do anything. Well, the United States wants you to do something. We have a question. Well, I agree with Frank. He says Uruguay is a good place to go to avoid a mass rush. Frank, I just did in my speech with John's group, I talked about 6 or 7 places I would go, and Uruguay was on that list. Bud says that it's a perfect time to travel short line. CDC card gave us access to everything. Digital registration is needed for Germany and Italy. After 14 days, you're free to move between countries. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know there's a 14 thing about moving between countries. That may also differ country to country, right?
Well, I think what we're going to see is I think the whole test protocol is going to dwindle away in the next 60 days. I think we'll go to pure vaccine mandate, and that's the way it's going to end up. The Delta variant is declined almost everywhere, right? UK is still struggling a little bit to bend their curve. I don't know what's going on there. I know it's a slightly Delta plus there or something, but somehow the UK never seems to be able to get down. But everywhere else I've seen it, even here to US, it goes up, it goes down. I mean, if you looked at Florida 2 months ago, you'd think the world was burning if you watch TV and the news. Right now, they have the lowest number of new cases in the country in Florida, and they basically did nothing. So other than some smart healthcare issues, right? So this tends to go in cycles. And if you're like me, I'm a stats guy from college, so I looked at the first wave of Delta, right? Then you see the second wave. It went up again, but not as high, right? It's come down. There'll probably be a third wave, which will be half of the Delta wave, and we're going to staircase our way down to just a low-level endemic, like the flu, if you will. The flu never goes away annually. It just moves around the world, right? From a big infection rate. So we'll see that with COVID as we go through it. And, I've been saying this from day one, give the American traveler the real information, what it's about, what the risk profile is for individuals and risk factors. Tell us what we need to do from a common sense standpoint, what really works, what doesn't, and then let us do it and make up our own decisions.
2 things. One is that many travel providers, still including airlines, are allowing you to cancel or change without penalty. So keep that in mind, that we have more flexibility as travelers as we have.
But that doesn't mean it's easy. No. You will spend hours on the phone trying to do that.
Yeah. I mean, they're trying to keep staffing up their phone lines, but there's not a whole lot of evidence of that. I've waited as long as 8 hours for someone to call me back, and I'm calling on some, platinum line for Delta, but I can't imagine. Right now, as far as I know, the Australian airline Qantas is the only one that's requiring that you have to have a vaccination to get on the plane. Do you see that coming to the States?
Boy, if you asked me a month ago, I'd say no. I'm not sure today. To be honest with you, Rudy, so you're going to guess from me, just how I talk at the shows. I haven't seen a lot of logic in the last 90 days when it comes to managing managing COVID in the United States. It's got so politicized that I don't know what's going to happen anymore. I mean, logic would say if you're vaccinated, you shouldn't care who's around you so much, right? So what difference does it make? I've had my third shot. I don't wear a mask unless I'm told I have to. And I've been to 2 weddings, maskless weddings, 3 trade shows in various masks or vaccine formats, a bunch of airplanes, right? Just like you have. And I think we've all been okay. Does that mean I might catch it and have a low-level reaction? It might. I don't know. But I'm pretty comfortable when I travel now and out and about. I'm not a high-risk profile either, right? Mind you. So
and the airlines do say with the mask wearing and with their filtration system, they have very little, but although it's sort of hard to tell if somebody gets COVID.
I don't know. When people go to sleep in the plane, I never see them wearing a mask, so it's okay. I'm fine with it. So the point is, I think logic would dictate one of 2 things, right? Logically, if everyone's vaccinated, you shouldn't have to worry about anything, and it should be easy to travel. If you're unvaccinated, right now, you should show a test. I think that's fair, right? Will it be pure? Will the government say you have to be mandated? I think that's a very possible scenario that the government's going to say, you must be vaccinated now to travel on planes, trains, and onwards, whatever. And I don't know the politics reverberation of that. It's not good.
Yeah. It would be incredible. We think people are irritated about masks. Imagine if they can't fly if they're not vaccinated or haven't had a test 72 hours before.
Right.
All right. So overall, you are optimistic about 2022. I am too, barring any sort of new strain that hits the world globally all at once.
Yep.
We're making progress on vaccinations slowly but surely in various countries to various different degrees. I hope Asia. What do you hear from Asia? Except I know Thailand's opening up.
Well, they're starting to spend money with us, so they must mean they're starting to ready to get welcome travelers back.
That's all I wanted to hear. If they're starting to spend money with you, then they want people to come.
Right. China's the one I can't figure out. They're a good customer of ours, but they've canceled right before the last few shows, and I guess I can understand that. I probably wouldn't want to be in that booth right now in an American trade show, right? I mean, with the public, because you just don't know what might happen. Most people would probably like to hear from and talk to them about when they can go back and see China. And there might be a few people, they get very upset that they're there. So from a public relations standpoint, probably makes sense to kind of wait it out a little. But I hear Taiwan, Malaysia, Indonesia's booking pretty heavily. Thailand's open. Singapore's coming back. We're seeing all these people start to move with us. So if they're moving with us, that means something's coming in the near future. So I think the world open. I think by January 1st, the world opens up, to be honest with you.
I'm not bothered by China's politics. I mean, I'm bothered by Chinese politics, but I mean, I don't, it's just world politics. We're always somebody we're arguing with. They have had this, as you know, an enormous spike suddenly in COVID in China after sort of lying low for a while. Suddenly Beijing's in lockdown, I think I read, which is hard to imagine.
Yeah, there are quite a few cities right now, and they're trying to get ready for the Winter Olympics and all that stuff. And
oh yeah, the Olympics, that's right.
At least here we can look at the CDC COVID test stats every day, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know what stats you have coming out of some of these countries, so I wouldn't be able to tell you whether that's a viable way to look at it or not. But I think just the nature of pandemics are, as time goes on, these things mutate. As they mutate, they become more transmissible and less deadly, and it becomes, eventually from a deadly disease to a more flu-like disease over time. That's not months, that's probably years, but we're starting to see that move along. I think the other thing, Rudy, when you talk about, the government needs to come up not just with a vaccine passport, but they need to come up with a recovered mechanism too. If you haven't been vaccinated, but have recovered from it, most of the studies I've seen lately show that you're actually better off than people like us who've been vaccinated. And there should be some recognition of that, because when you add that to the 60-70% of people who've been vaccinated in the US, we're probably getting around 85-90% of the people ready to travel.
Good point. I've never heard that, John. Thank you.
So we haven't seen
that. I mentioned, Frank mentioned Uruguay, a good place to go to avoid a mass rush. And a friend of mine named David, who I know goes to Uruguay a lot, as much as I do, says in all capital letters here, Uruguay does not allow travelers from the U.S. right now, but it may open up in November. Stay tuned. So if you were thinking of booking for Uruguay next weekend, take David's advice to heart.
Yeah, I can tell you
yes.
what I heard on some hot spots you want to go to, though. I think if you want deals right now, Panama. Panama's open. They're going through a major rebranding in the next few months. So there's a lot of deals coming up. Panama. Dominican Republic has something like an outrageous number of 26 new resorts coming online in 2022.
Oh, my goodness.
So they need travelers there. That's a great thing. Costa Rica has been open all along and doing well. So you can see that. And Mexico is making a big push. So Caribbean, by the way, is pretty much open right now. Having a great year. There's still good deals in there, especially when you get in the shoulder seasons. And they're ready to welcome us back. There are individual restrictions based on the islands, but it's nothing, not quarantine kind of basis. Basically, show us a test, show us a card, and you're in, and you can have a good time. So lots of these places are opening up with some great deals. I think Canada's going to have a huge issue. They've been closed forever, right? They're coming back online, and I think most Americans have forgotten there's even a Canada there. So if they want to start travelers, going to have to start making some deals.
Yeah, Americans who think they're going to rent a place easily in Florida, as they did last winter, are going to be surprised because the Canadians are already on the horn right now, locking them all in. But the general, I know John will agree with me before I let him go back to his real work. The general advice is that all the rules that John and I have been talking about have been changing, sometimes weekly, monthly at the very least, with each country. So make sure you check the tourism or the government site of the country, if you're going out of the United States, the country you want to visit, and see what the rules are. And then when you book an airline ticket, if you need to do that, or a cruise line, ask what the refund policies are. I mean, do you have up until the day you sail or the day you fly? So you just got to check that out for every bit of travel, particularly outside of the United States, to make sure you're covered in case something goes wrong or you don't want to go.
And the other thing is just be ready for it. So if you're an independent traveler, not the cruises and the tours we've been talking about, if you're like me, a lot of times you're just going independently, you're going to Paris for a week or whatever it might be, just wait for it. As soon as Europe opens up, it's going to be a knife fight for market share amongst these destinations. They all need to get back online, and there will be huge, huge deals. There's going to be an outreach with people just saying they just want you there. The hotels will be cheap. The museums will be empty. There's a great window of opportunity here in the next few months as the world opens to take advantage of it. If you wait to travel next fall, you'll probably be back in crowds, right? So there's a great opportunity here to look for a deal and grab it and travel. And as I said in the show, you might have been there. I don't know if maybe it was introducing you when I said it. Look, you're looking right now as a traveler, right? Just book it. You've saved your money. You haven't gone anywhere real in the last 18 months. We've all been, can you watch Netflix anymore? Can you watch one more series, right? If it's Andrew McCarthy's, you got to watch it. But other than that, we've seen it all. So we just want to get away, but don't be so hesitant as not to book. You see something you're like, just book it. And you know what? Maybe it's $100 more and you can get it a week later. It doesn't matter. You'll have the experience, but there's going to be a massive amount of people ready to go. And if you don't book it now, you're going to miss that great opportunity. So my advice to everyone here is as soon as you feel comfortable, go. Just go.
Okay. John Golicz gets the last word. John Golicz owns, along with his family, a whole bunch of travel shows, 9 of them next year in the United States. You can find more details by going to Travel Show or Shows?
Travel Shows.
TravelShowsPlural.com. You'll see all the offerings for 2022 and see if they're coming to your big city or nearby where you live, and check them out. And I may be there for a good number of them, and I'll see you there, as will John and his son Jonathan, and hopefully a whole lot of exhibitors. John, thanks so much for stopping by. We really appreciate it.
Awesome to see you again, my friend.
All right, I'll see you in January in New York, I think. So
take care.
Great, thanks. And again, let me just remind you, if you're watching this later on Facebook or YouTube, this interview was conducted live in the afternoon Central Time of Thursday, October 28th, 2021. I know these things live forever online. So if you're tuning in 2 years from now, I hope the advice isn't the same. I hope you're not worrying about masks and COVIDs and vaccination records, but just be aware that's the time period we're talking in. That's our reality. I'm Rudy Maxa. I'm a travel journalist. I probably should put a plug in for our company. With a partner, I started a travel company in 2019. We did fine in 2019 and shut down for 2020 and pretty much for 21. We have one tour, December 5th. It's a Christmas market tour to Vienna, Salzburg, Munich, and Zurich. And we have room for 1 or 2 more couples on that. Again, we'll only have then 10 or 12 people at the most. They're all small tours. They're upscale, you're staying at the Ritz-Carlton in Vienna and so on, and good restaurants. You can check those out at maxatours.com. And if you go to maxatours.com/newsletter, sign up for my every other week newsletter. It's sort of an informal gossip. I'm a former Washington Post reporter, so I can't help it being a journalist. So it's sort of an account of what's happening this week in travel, predictions about the future, a couple restaurants I might have discovered in, I don't know, San Francisco or Paris or whatever. Feel free to go to maxatours.com/newsletter. Just put in your full name, first and last name, and your email. I'm not going to besiege you. It's only every 2 weeks. Delighted to have you here today. We'll do it again 2 weeks from now on Thursday. Meanwhile, happy travels, or at least happy planning for travels. Take care.